Hi, this is Dave with EdgeStar Technical Support. Today we're going to be talking about the KC2000 single tap kegerator. We'll go over basic assembly, parts, instructions, installation, and maintenance. Alright, so now that we've got our coupler hooked up, we're ready to put the beer in. And by the way, this thing fits a multitude of kegs. I'm going to show you a quarter barrel and a full half shell sand key here. There's other ones that will fit, and we're going to talk about a couple of them that don't fit, and we'll cover that in a minute. So, without further ado, here's our keg support plate. Folks, the front of this goes towards the front of the kegerator, this low spot, and you can look here on the back where these corners are cut out, and that's part of the back. So, what we're going to do, we're just going to set that down in there and push it all the way back. If that's installed correctly, the little spots that are sticking up from the bottom of the keg floor will stop that from moving around. So, and it does, because it won't go back any further. So now we're ready to hook up our keg. So I'm going to start with a small one because it's a little easier to handle. But I'll show you both of them. It's our little quarter keg. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our assembled coupler, and you're going to look. There's slots in here on the edge, and there's male slots in here. So what you're going to do is you're going to line it up, and you're going to push down and sometimes it's kind of a hard push. There we go. So that only goes one direction, and just make sure you don't put any real pressure on this. And that's another point. A lot of people will either try to press down on this for leverage, or they'll try and pick it up. Either one of those will result in coupler destruction, which is what we don't want. So make sure that you don't put any undue pressure on this. You don't try and pick up your keg with this. So once you're done with this, now this is installed, we could set it in here and just kind of walk it back. Once you get that in there, you can turn it to whatever way you want that's easiest to get to the coupler handle. Because eventually we're going to have to what I call arm the system. So we have to puncture the keg, and we need to have room in there to do that. So I'll show you the bigger keg just for purposes of illustration. So we're going to pull this one out, and normally what you would do, you're changing an empty keg, you're going to turn your gas off at the tank, on the valve on the top of the tank, and you could actually go up in here and turn it off at the regulator back there, and then pull this ring, and that'll let any residual pressure out. And that's also how you adjust pressures, but we'll get into that. So we would normally relieve it, turn it, pull it straight out, just like that. So the bigger one is no different, with the exception that it's physically bigger. And here's our full-size keg. And this goes on exactly the same way. And it's now locked in place. And this will fit, and you kind of have to get your lines out of the way. And that will fit in there. And we should be able to close the door. Yeah, look at that. So, which brings me to yet another point I was talking about earlier. There are some kegs that will not fit. These specifically being Coors, Miller, or any of their derivatives. If they made it, it's not going to fit in here. That's because their kegs on that center band, they use a lot wider band than what the Anheuser-Busch or the AB kegs do. So this is primarily for AB kegs. If you drink Coors or Millers or the derivatives, folks, they're not going to fit. Tells you that on the website also. So in our next segment, we're going to get into a little bit more about the assembly, the last few bits of it, and then we start getting into adjusting pressures and troubleshooting. Alright, so we're going to cover all of the rest of this stuff in one last segment here, and then we have joy, we have beer. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to assume everything's together. We've got it all together here. We're going to go ahead and fire up the system. So again, initially we need to start with a cold keg. The unit needs to run for about 24 hours to cool down the inside. We'll get into that with the temperature adjustment. And we're going to assume right now that we're ready to fire up some gas here. So what we're going to do is we're going to arm the system, and I'm going to talk a little bit about pressures. So we're going to turn our tank on. And I don't have any gas in here, but I'm just showing you how this works. So we're going to arm the system and turn it on. And then initially, we're going to pull our little knob out, just like I did there. And then you can adjust it up and down. Now, you're going to want to start at about 4 psi. Now, the book says you can do 10 to 12 to start with. I personally believe that's too much. It results in a lot of foam, and it never seems to stop, at that rate. So it's easier to go up than it is back down. So let's say we start at 4 psi. We can work our way up 1 pound at a time until you're happy with it. So, and be mindful too, the first few pours, you're going to get about 3 or 4 pitchers with quite a bit of foam in it until it starts evening out. So don't be alarmed if your first few pitchers are nothing but a lot of foam. That's okay. And remember to tilt your glass or your pitcher sideways a little bit, and it won't foam as much. So we're going to turn that on, set that for about 4 pounds. Remember, we might need to come back and adjust it. And once you're done, you're going to push that knob back in to lock it in place. So, and then you're also going to open up your secondary valve, which is here. And by the way, when you position these clamps, make sure it's not in the way. But just turn that around, and then that will actually make the gas flow from here inside. So up is off, down is on. Okay? So we're ready to move on the inside. So I'm going to spin this around. Spin that around Vanna White style. Okay, so what we're going to do now is open it up. And you might want to pull your keg out a little bit so you can get to it. Now we're ready to engage the beer. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull this out. And you hear that? I've got a little residual tank pressure in. But anyway, so that's how you do that. Down is on, up is off, obviously. And then you would go ahead and disconnect this if you were taking it out. So that's all you really need to do. Now, the other thing I was talking about here as far as pressures go, if you find that you have too much foam and you've turned that pressure up and you got a lot of foam, you need to make sure that you get that pressure back down. So what you're going to do is you go back there and you shut your gas off at that little secondary shutoff valve back there. And then what you're going to do is adjust your regulator. So you shut down the flow, adjust your regulator, come down here and you're going to pull that pull ring, and that's going to release the pressure inside the keg. That way when you open up that secondary valve again, the little hand valve, you'll be at your new pressure at the tank, or in here. So you need to make sure that you turn that and just pull it, and that will relieve it there as well. And we'll put this back in there. Now, also, temperature-wise, you need to make sure you adjust your thermostat. Folks, this thermostat is adjustable from 1 through 6. You need to make sure, and that you have to look here. I already had that on. So you'll hear a click. When you hear the click, the thermostat's engaged. You're going to want to max this thing out at 6. Now later on, I'm going to show you how to do a thermostat adjustment. I'm not going to do that in this video, but we'll actually take it apart. You can actually make it adjust further down temperature-wise, but you have to be careful about how you do it. I'll show you that later on. But your initial temperature setting is going to be at 6, and then you close your door, and I'd probably let it sit for a little while, and then you can go ahead and start pulling beer and enjoy. So that's our keg assembly for the KC2000. I hope that this do-it-yourself video has helped you to set up your new kegerator. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact us at www.edgestar.com. Hi, this is Dave with EdgeStar Technical Support. Today we're going to be talking about the KC2000 Single Tap Kegerator. We'll go over basic assembly, parts, instructions, installation, and maintenance. Alright, so now that we've got our coupler hooked up, we're ready to put the beer in. And by the way, this thing fits a multitude of kegs. I'm going to show you a quarter barrel and a full half shell sand key here. But there's other ones that will fit, and we're going to talk about a couple of them that don't fit, and we'll cover that in a minute. So, without further ado, here's our keg support plate. Folks, the front of this goes towards the front of the kegerator, this low spot, and you can look here on the back where these corners are cut out, and that's part of the back. So, what we're going to do, we're just going to set that down in there and push it all the way back. If that's installed correctly, the little spots that are sticking up from the bottom of the keg floor,